We're not in the business of predictions, but there was a time when you used to write on resumes, proficient in Microsoft Word, proficient in email. When do you think we're going to reach the era where you don't even include proficient in AI because it's an expectation?
I think we're already at that point today. I think we're at that point today. I think there is still a lot of fear, of course, around AI and jobs. But what I will say is I think there's much greater recognition today that AI may not take your job, but someone who's really skilled in AI might.
Stand by.
I spend a lot of time researching the future of work, and AI is changing this landscape fast. And with that change, naturally comes a lot of uncertainty. How should I expect my job to evolve? What skills should I be building? So today, I'm chatting with Colette Stahlbommer, who leads the future of work at Microsoft. And I want to get clarity on some of these questions. How might the org chart evolve? What can I expect my role to look like in the coming years? And what should I wake up and do tomorrow as a result of what I'm learning? Colette, so the future of work, this is one of my favorite areas to research, so I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I want to start by asking how AI is actually being used in the workforce today. What change are employees already seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sinead. So, we published something called the Work Trend Index, as you know. The data shows that there's been a pretty big change this year. Last year, employees were kind of experimenting with AI, and leaders were actually kind of lagging a little bit. And now we see a big flip in that. One thing that we see is this dynamic of what we talk about in my team and describe as moving from the org chart to the work chart. Okay, because AI democratizes expertise, it opens up all these opportunities for people to actually work in what we call the Hollywood model. So, when you make a blockbuster film, right? A group of people come together from all different disciplines to work on a Hollywood film. And then when that film is over, they disperse and they go on to the next project. That's happening at work with AI. Teams are fluid, more agile. They can come together because AI democratizes expertise. They can come together on a project and then disband and go on to the next one. So this idea that work is getting much more fluid and agile. We see that people who have domain expertise in one area, take marketing, you can use AI in adjacent areas like PR. And so now I can be an expert in many, many more things.
If we were to narrow down on the future of the org chart, right now we view org charts as this static framework, and an employee basically slots into a defined role. In the future, that chart is probably going to collapse or be something that continues to evolve.
Right. It's kind of getting imploded, right? Really that's why I think one of the most important mindsets for employees today is to basically be a lifelong learner. Right? And have this mindset that the most important thing you can be doing is skilling yourself up on AI, right? How are you using AI in your daily flow of work? How are you delegating to AI? How are you taking parts of your job and outsourcing those tasks to AI?
I totally agree. And I think it's such a fascinating time that an employee and the CEO are in the same learning paradigm right now. Everybody is starting from scratch and trying to figure this out. So nobody is actually behind. Everybody is trying to figure it out.
That's exactly right. But levels the playing field.
It totally levels the playing field. So now is the time to really dive in. But leadership does play a really big role, right? There are some employees that feel empowered, and they're given the training, they're given their tools. There are other employees who hear nothing from leadership about it. And then there's a third camp that feel, is my job safe? I don't even really know where I stand. Where we talk about AI at the company, but nobody tells me where I stand. So how do you think leaders should be approaching this?
It can't be an afterthought. The skilling piece for individuals, super important. But really, it takes leadership at the top, right, to say, hey, this is a mandate. It's a business imperative. We need to have a shift here because really, you're either going to disrupt yourself or be disrupted in this environment.
And so doesn't this also mean, there's the technical change, and so employees are going to have to learn different skills, but then there's also the cultural one. Because when we talk about the future of the org chart, That also means not only does somebody in marketing need to know how to use AI, but that HR is going to have to grapple with their department's going to look very different as well, because how they think about talent coming into these defined roles and functions, that also has to evolve.
It does. I think we're just thinking about hiring completely differently. Maybe in the past you needed to have 10 years of experience in a specific area to kind of come in with that. Mm-hmm. And now I think people are looking for hunger and being really super tech curious, right? How many different AI tools have you listed on your LinkedIn profile, all right, that you actually know how to use? Can you demonstrate that aptitude for learning? And that is the skill today.
And so this would speak then directly to new grads or younger people that are stepping into the workforce, that we're actually moving into an era where it's not going to be defined by experience, but by your ability to learn skills in real time. So doesn't this mean we could also see young people leapfrog over people with experience if they're learning more quickly, if they're diving into these AI tools?
I'm a mother of 2 teenagers, mm-hmm. and I tell my kids all the time, right? Like, school is obviously really important. Don't shortchange education, but also, how are you experimenting and learning with these new tools? Like, the world is sort of their oyster in terms of the opportunity, because if you're a young person today, you can start the next multi-million-dollar business, right? Just you and your friends. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty exciting time.
So then is the future of work much more about skills? So we need to maybe move away from defining our identities with a job title, and it's much more about what skills do you have and what is your propensity to learn?
I absolutely believe that's true.
So what is the vision for the future of work? So knowing where AI agents are, or AI systems in general, where they're going, so 5-10 years, are we co-creating with these AI systems? Are they tools or are they teammates?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's a little of both. But let me just start with saying that I think what's really important for everyone to know is you just have to start using these tools at work. If you're not using them daily and you're not actually building that daily habit, you're never going to get to be what we call an agent boss. So let me tell you about an agent boss and what that is. So take Alex on my team. Alex is a data analyst, and Alex has at any given time 3 agents that he's created that he's outsourced different parts of his job to. So one agent is scanning the web for new research that might be interesting to us and our team. Another agent is analyzing the data and pulling out insights. And then a third agent is writing up the reports and the recaps. I believe that every company has Alexes, right? There are Alexes in every organization. You just have to find them and kind of tap into those people who are the early adopters, because they will light the path for others.
And is that the future of work for all of us, where we all become Alex and we're directing teams of AI agents? So right now you basically direct a computer to do things, and in the future you're going to direct a computer that can talk back.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Very interesting. So does that mean we also all have to have leadership skills and communication skills, because we're going to be in a leadership role? Even if they're AI systems, we're going to be directing systems, and the better instructions you can give to them and decisions you can make with their answers, the better equipped you are.
You kind of need to think about your job now as like you are the CEO of your role, mm-hmm. right? And so how are you, or outsourcing parts of it to AI? It's building that habit to actually stop and think, do I need to do this, or can I delegate it to Copilot? And it's also really building that muscle to work with AI, work with Copilot like a thought partner and a collaborator.
Right. So we move from the doing to the directing in a way.
Exactly.
And then, so what about cognitive atrophy and outsourcing thinking? Because that's a real concern. So even as a boss, how do you evaluate whether employees are delegating the thinking or the directing?
This is why I think we talk about the human part of this being so important, and the human in the loop. At the end of the day, Copilot or any AI, it's a tool, right? And we have more amazing tools at our fingertips today than we've ever had. But if you think about, the typewriter or the internet, right? These things are tools. The human piece of that is so important. Copilot is not creative on its own. It needs me. It needs a person to tell it what to do, to direct it. And so I do think at the same time, like skills that we're looking for, talking about hiring, critical thinking, judgment becomes really important. Communication, right? To your point, you have to be able to articulate your goal and what it is you're looking for and give good instruction.
And when do you think, and this could be a long shot and it's totally going to be a prediction, and I know we're not in the business of predictions, but there was a time when you used to write on resumes, proficient in Microsoft Word, proficient in email. When do you think we're going to reach the era where you don't even include proficient in AI because it's an expectation?
I think we're already at that point today. I think we're at that point today. I think there is still a lot of fear, of course, around AI and jobs. But what I will say is I think there's much greater recognition today that AI may not take your job, but someone who's really skilled in AI might. And so it's really just not a time to sit on the sidelines, right? Like I tell every team member, employee, and my own kids, now is the time to lean in and learn and really get comfortable, experiment with these tools. Another piece of this is about raising your hand for the messy work, right? The uncharted territory, because no organization has really figured out, right, how to totally make the most of AI and these tools. We're in a transformational phase. And so now is the time, at any level, raise your hand for that project where you're trying to figure out, how do I use AI to make this better?
And when you hear about AI and work, the reality is there is a lot of tension and uncertainty because job loss can accompany that conversation, and it is a realistic part of transformation. So how should people who are fearful of this moment be thinking about AI with respect to their job, their career, and what comes next?
Well, here's the thing. I think you kind of have to take a long view, right? I mean, as with other technology inflection points, whether it was the internet or things prior to that, in the long run, technology creates, and we believe, creates more jobs than it actually eliminates. But in the short term, that's scary, right? And so, again, I think some of the things that each individual can do is just lean into learning these tools and getting skilled up.
Right. And I think it's also, some of it comes down to leadership, because if a company is only thinking about AI from the perspective of who can I automate, not what new opportunities can I go after on the top line, like that's a growth opportunity. So I think that it's also, it's from the leadership too. How are they thinking about this technology?
I mean, the most forward-thinking customers that we talk to and I talk to every day are not thinking about it like that, right? They're really thinking about the opportunity upside, not just to amplify every single individual and what they can do and their ambition and 10Xing themselves at work, if you will, but also what's the opportunity, for the company and the business.
What about skills? So if somebody was to apply to a job at Microsoft today, what are the non-negotiable skills for the future of work?
I think the non-negotiables are really back to this learning piece, right? In addition to things like, you need to be agile, right? You need to be adaptable. The world's moving really fast. Are you someone who can go with that, right? Who has an appetite to learn and doesn't think about your job as being in a box, right? So critical thinking, judgment, adaptability, being very tech forward, right? Very tech curious. I want to talk to people who are coming in and saying that they know how to use these skills already. They know how to build an agent. Those are, I think, highly marketable skills today.
Right. I think the learning piece is real. And in some ways, how are we responding to AI in this moment? How are you able, do you even know how you learn? That's an opportunity to learn, because a lot of us, we don't even think about it. Maybe we read, but how do you learn best? And that's actually a critical skill for the future.
It is. And I think a lot of times people learn best by doing.
Right now, it's the breakthrough technology, but because it's so general purpose, eventually it's like electricity. And so if you're a company that doesn't understand how to adopt that, it's not an if it's going to work, it definitely won't work.
That's right. If you're not using the electricity, you're probably going to be not around.
Right. Unless you're a campsite, it's not going to work out.
That's right.
So if there's one thing that you want people to know about the future of work, what would it be?
I think if there's one thing I'd want people to know, it's that really now is a time to be optimistic. It's honestly an incredible time. It's an incredible time in history for people to lean in and learn and be optimistic and, really think of yourself as, hey, I can actually start the next big thing if I skill myself up with AI.
I love that. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sinead.